A striker's delight at 170 pounds, and if you like the entree that is one Court McGee taking on Matt Brown, then you're really going to like the main course. We're talking about the Dirty Bird taking on the Great White. Matt, sidebar. If a Great White went up against a bird, what do you think the bird comp would be to go up against a Great White to make it a fair match?
The question is, where do they fight? On land, a duck would beat a Great White shark. A Great White shark doesn't have many options on land.
I'm going to say, like, if it was either a cassowary on land...
You're violent AF.
Or a condor. What are you taking, the Great White or the cassowary? We'll go cassowary.
On land, Craig, I would take you or me. I would take a puppy against a Great White. Do you know what happened to a Great White on land? It would go... and then die.
Well, when it comes down to this matchup, if you look at it for the Great White, Alex Morono, on about, 4 days' notice, replacing Robbie Lawler against Santiago Ponzinibbio, won the first round, won the second round. It was catch weight 180 pounds. In the third round, he ate a right hand and he went, and then he ate another big one, and then that was the end of the fight. Alex Morono on 4 days' notice with a 4-fight win streak on the line looked really good against Ponzinibbio, and that was the story of that one. So now he gets a little bit of time off. It's been about 5 months since that fight at UFC 282 when he took on Ponzinibbio, and he gets a shot against Tim Means. And Tim Means is a guy that's been around and done some things, and I was surprised. Tim Means, for as long in the tooth as he may be, only 2 bonuses for him, but this guy is a walking highlight reel fight of the night type. He's a tricky grappler. He's a really tricky striker. He mixes his knees with his elbows, with his long-range punches. So for Tim Means, I know he's beaten some fighters that you know and love. The best bare-knuckle fighter known to man, Mike Perry, has lost to Tim Means.
He lit Mike Perry up, too, on the feet. It was kind of wild.
Consider that one. So when you look at a matchup like this, Matt, I know Morono for the Cerrone fight, for the fight that he had against Zavada, he really looked at against Mickey Gall.
Do you think Alex Morono realizes how lucky he is matchmaking-wise in the UFC? We're going to go through his resume really quick, and we're just going to go through fighters who had more than average amount of promotion for where they were in their career. Nico Price, more than average. Jordan Meehan had more than average. Maybe not at that point in his career, but still, at one point was thought of as a top contender and top prospect. Max Griffin, Chaos Williams, Reese McKee was a top prospect. Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Mickey Gall, Matthew Semelsberger, and Santiago Ponzinibbio. Alex Morono has been there and done that, and a lot of those guys have had a big promotional push throughout their career. It's just kind of wild for Alex Morono. Like, he kind of has the resume of a guy like a Paddy Pimblett, right? Like, somebody who would kind of have a big promotional push from the UFC, because he's fought a lot of people who are kind of the former stars where, hey, if you get the win this time out, it's going to really change your career. Like, the Anthony Pettis fight at 170 was kind of looked at as, hey, Morono, if you're able to beat Showtime, it's sort of the end of the road for Pettis. We don't really know what we're going to get from him. Anthony Pettis went out there and looked really good at 170. Same thing against Cowboy. Now, luckily, Morono went out there and dusted Cowboy Cerrone. That was not much of a fight whatsoever. But even his last time out against Ponzinibbio was a top contender in his prime and sort of fallen on hard times. And that was kind of the reset for Ponzinibbio. And like you had said, Alex Morono on short notice went out there and looked great. He had put his combinations together and landed great volume in the first 2 rounds. And I agree. I thought he banked those first 2 rounds. And as long as he survived the third, he was going to win that fight.
Yeah, he hurt Ponzinibbio on multiple occasions, wobbled him. And if you look at Morono's career, 5 knockdowns, 4 knockdowns against. If you look at it for Tim Means, 7 knockdowns earned to 4 taken, and both these guys stick around sometimes for the receipt, and they do get hit. If you look at it for Morono, even the fight against Semelsberger, wins the first round, wins the second round, third round, Semelsberger with that swollen up left eye, runs in there, throws that jump knee, he drops Morono, and Morono tries to rally back out of it, but ultimately loses that round. Morono's one of those guys, I don't know if I'm on board with the analogy, but for a guy like Morono, what does he do really well? He mixes martial arts. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's out of Gracie Baja Woodlands. That's his gym with his wife. He cross-trains at Fortis MMA. His striking, well, he's a Taekwondo black belt, so he can really get it going. That's why that Pettis fight was so intriguing, because their martial arts were both the same out of those 2 disciplines. So if you look at a guy like Morono, if he's on the back foot, he can struggle, though he moves out of the range really well. I said that with Yeon Xiaonan. I don't know why I didn't pick her, but Morono is one of those guys. nice leg kick 1-2, circle away from the power side. That's what he does really, really well. And if it goes down to the mat, Morono doesn't really have great takedown defense, so he can threaten in the scrambles with his own jiu-jitsu. When you look at a guy like Tim Means, I know that jiu-jitsu might not be at the forefront if you look at the Kevin Holland fight or you look at the fight against D-Rod. Those guys are top 15 opponents. But when you look at a guy like Tim Means, this guy dishes out the violence. And I know in the UFC, the sample size, it is a plenty, 14-11 with a no contest since he joined in 2012. But the names on his resume are equally as impressive, whether he beat them or he lost to them. When you look at a fight like this, though, Matt, I mean, fit NHB zone Tim Means, what does he got to do to get a win over Morono?
Has to get on the inside and make it ugly. And I know that's wild because Morono himself is a very good fighter in that range, but Tim Means, I think, can slightly outvolume Morono. Now, if we get like a Reese McGee versus Morono fight, but Tim Means is Reese McGee, it's going to be such a good fight, and I'm very excited for that possibility. But I do think Morono is going to be able to match him on the feet, and I'll be very interested to see whoever shoots for the first takedown is going to be losing the fight. That's the prediction, I guess, early on, because if Morono does feel uncomfortable, I could see him going for an offensive takedown. We have seen Tim Means struggle heavily with his defensive wrestling in the past, even up until recently, so I think both guys are very well matched. But I said for Matt Brown in his fight against Court McGee, those guys have like the check gas light on, right? These guys have like, maybe not a quarter tank full, but they still have a little bit more left in, right? Like, even for Tim Means, I know he lost to Matt Brown. I know he isn't in his prime necessarily, but he's still going to go out there and put out competitive performances. I think he can eat a little bit more punishment than a guy like Matt Brown can at this stage of his career.
And that's the crazy part about Tim Means. Last time out, he got dropped by Max Griffin in the first round. I thought Means won the second and the third.
So he came back
It was
strong,
one of those fights that was kind of close, even though there were some judges that scored at 30-27 for Max Griffin. He had a good showing in the second, had a good showing in the third. So when you look at a matchup like this, I know Alex Morono is favored to get the win at about a 2-1 clip. We have a look at the Topology votes. I'm going to say over under 80% for the Great White in this one.
I'll say under.
I'm going to say under. It's over.
I've been wrong on a lot of
613 total votes, 88% Morono, 76% by decision for the 12% that I mean, 68% by decision. But if you look at it for a guy like Tim Means, even if he gets hit early in some of his fights, the Dalby fight's an example, the Mike Perry fight, he's in it for all 3 rounds, and he doesn't tend to slow down with his output, and he can still mix in those power shots into his combinations. So when you look at a guy like Tim Means, if he's able to get it done, it's probably going to go late. For a guy like Morono, he could starch with some of those shots to then cause Means to panic, like we saw in the D-Rod fight.
Yeah.
So for me, I do like Alex Morono. I have picked him in quite a few of our Fight Night Picks fights, whether I've been right or wrong with those, but I do like his style and the fact that he also tends to ride on his bike, but he tends to get out of the way of damage where Means tends to accept it. So I will go with Morono in the fight. This should be a really interesting one-on-one.
I think it'll be a high-volume fight, too. I do think both guys are going to be in it for the long run. I don't think we'll get a quick finish from either guy, especially not early. So I do agree with you. I like Alex Morono. I think he can match a lot of the volume of Tim Means. And for Means, he has had a pretty good shade. I know he's been finished. I know he's been hurt, but he's had a long career. It's going to happen to anybody. I think Morono can hurt Tim Means. Means can hurt Morono, too, because we've seen that happen. But Means has to get a lot of volume going behind it first.
I'm assuming Tim Means has watched Trailer Park Boys before, knows Philadelphia Phil Collins, and gets the reference of, what are you looking at my gut for? But Matt, both of us going with the Great White, Alex Morono, to get the win in the matchup. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. The next fight on the card, Angela Hill moving up in the ranks to take on Mackenzie Dern. You're going to want to check that one out. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.